Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to our VIDA podcast, where we're going to help educate military veterans and their spouses on opportunities in Web3. Our plan is to host a series of industry leaders, many of whom are veterans or spouses themselves, so we can learn about their journey down the crypto rabbit hole while understanding opportunities for transitioning veterans into space. My name is Chris Perkins. I'm a combat Marine veteran who spent 15 years on Wall Street before transitioning into crypto myself. And before we begin, I wanted to thank our sponsor, Luca, who have dedicated their time and resources to make this podcast possible. Today, we'll be speaking with one of the most prominent military veterans in crypto, Anthony Pompliano, an Army veteran, co-founder of Morgan Creek Digital Assets, host of the Pomp podcast, and an institution in the crypto community. Welcome, Anthony.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited about this.
No, awesome. So before we get started, wanted you to explain to the audience, why did you choose the Army, and tell us about your background growing up? What led you to that point?
Well, I knew the Army was better than the Navy, the Air Force, and a bunch of other various things I could have done. So the Army was obviously the number one choice. But no, in all seriousness, I was in high school and I was waiting to go to college. I'd graduated in December of my senior year. I was going to go play football. And I basically signed up for a reserve contract that would have allowed me to go ahead and participate in college, play football, and then afterwards I would owe some full-time commitment. And it was, somewhat of a rash decision. I didn't have like a life plan. It's not like my entire family was in the military or anything like that. It frankly sounded cool. They paid a signing bonus. I thought it would be good from like a leadership training standpoint. And so I went ahead and I signed up at 17. And from there, everything was kind of going according to plan until I was a junior in college. I did not do ROTC while in school and played football. And I got a phone call. The unit got deployed. So we got called up, and I was one of the individuals from the unit that ended up deploying during my junior year, missed 3 semesters, and then went to Iraq and came back and finished school.
Wow, that must have been a bit of a culture shock going from a fraternity party one day and next thing you know, you're in Iraq. Could you unpack that a little bit? What was that like?
Yeah, that's exactly how I usually describe it is, when you're in college as a 20-year-old kid, all you care about is like, what's the party on Friday night? And when I got deployed, I was by far one of the youngest guys. I was fortunate that I actually went with a number of folks who were kind of late 20s, early 30s. Many of them, this wasn't their first deployment. The culture shock was not only kind of a college setting to, violent combat, but also these guys are worried about their wives, their kids, their mortgages, all the things that as you grow older become important in life. As a 20-year-old kid, I wouldn't worry about any of that stuff. Frankly, I didn't even think about the idea that people had mortgages. So it was a great learning lesson. Very thankful for the guys that I deployed with. They were incredible in terms of kind of taking me under their wing, and was fortunate to come home safely.
Are you comfortable explaining some of your experiences in Iraq? What happened during your deployment? Was there anything formative that really shaped you going forward?
Yeah, I would say really there was kind of 3 things that I took away from it. One of them was just seeing the, kind of the plight of the average citizen in Iraq. You see how these people live. You see kind of what happens in a war zone, but not through kind of the military lens. You see it from the way that their lives are impacted. And I think that that for whatever reason really stuck with me of just, you see a teenage kid and you're like, man, my life was so much different than yours. And some of it was just the probability that being born in the United States versus being born in Iraq, right, which none of us have control over. So that was kind of a very big takeaway for me. Second was obviously the combat aspect of it. Early on in deployment, there was an incident. We ended up losing a soldier. I think from that, my takeaway was just, life's short and we all end up at the same place, which is unfortunately dead. And so that was kind of a big shock. And then the third thing is, kind of contrary to the first point of once you're taken out of the environment in which you're comfortable and you enjoy, you tend to miss it more. And so another big one was, I missed my family. I missed my friends. I missed kind of the way of life that I had previously. And so I just said to myself, hey, I'm here. I got to do what I got to do here. But when I go back, I'm going to enjoy that much more and kind of not take it for granted. And so, when you're going through those experiences, as most people listening to this have, you can go one of two ways. You can be like, man, this sucks. And, how the hell did I get here? And look at it as kind of woe is me. Or you can look at it from the perspective of, I signed up for this. It's my responsibility. And what are the good things that I can take out of it? And fortunately, I was able to come back and benefit from the experience.
Awesome answer. And I really appreciate, your perspective, right? You come back and you look at things totally different. We've had a bunch of folks on, and you have a unique experience in that you were enlisted. Maybe could you talk a little bit about what it's like to be an enlisted soldier? And maybe, I was a zero. I maybe had a little bit, I didn't work clearly, but you did. So, and in my experience, it was those corporals and sergeants that really, called all the shots and really made all the difference in the world in combat and beyond. But would love to understand your perspective as an enlisted man.
Yeah. It's funny because when I signed up, most people in the position that I was in, I went to college, they would have joined ROTC, and maybe I would have, maybe I wouldn't have. I don't really know, but it just wasn't possible given the workload schedule of school, the Reserve and National Guard stuff, and then also playing football. Right, it just literally football practice at the same time ROTC would meet in the morning, and so you just couldn't do both. And so I didn't have some grand plan of like. Hey, I want to be an officer. I don't want to be an officer. It was more so just out of necessity that I didn't do ROTC. I will say that when I got to Iraq, the jokes flowed perfectly of like I work for a living. But I think the thing that I really took away from it, I'll never forget. We were there in Iraq. We actually got a new gold bar. Who stepped in to lead us, and we had an E7 who essentially said, in no uncertain terms, very early on to him being there, here on base you're in charge, out there I'm in charge. And I remember, kind of looking at it, and the lieutenant was incredibly intelligent, very hardworking, but just young, right, and kind of right out of school. And the E7 was exactly what you expected, rode his Harley on the weekend, had the mustache, and you didn't want to mess with him, you didn't want to cross him, and so I think that was one of the first times where it really hit home to me of like, look, that there is experience that is gained in kind of the classroom and training, and then there's experience that's gained in the field, and obviously the best officers that they start out with very little kind of field experience, and they gain that over time. So it's less about one track either way ends up preventing you from getting certain types of experiences. It's just kind of time actually in service and deployed forward. And so in terms of, the advantages, I think from not being an officer, I was able to go to a couple of schools, most notably the NCO schools. And those NCO schools really drove a lot of leadership training, I think. And it wasn't, maybe the same thing that officers get, but that leadership school, especially the infantry leadership schools, I always tell individuals that like that's probably the number one thing I took away from the military outside of like the life experience. Was going to that school, I think really kind of changed the way that I thought about teams, leadership, kind of mission setting, planning, just all the things that we all know go into that. And so if I had to pick like one thing I did in the military that had a profound impact on me later on, it was those NCO leadership schools that ended up really kind of crafting a lot of what I ended up doing over time.
I totally agree. Like I said earlier, in my experience, it's the special sauce of the U.S. military is our NCO Corps. I mean, that's what makes all the difference in the world. And I can't tell you how much I learned from NCOs throughout my career. Okay, so you come back from Iraq, and then you finish up school. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey as you finish school and then you go off into the world of business?
Yeah. So when I came back, I actually wanted to just go back as a contractor, right? My thought process, I was a 21-year-old kid at the time when I came back, and I was like, man, they're going to pay me, $200,000 to go back and do what I just did. I don't got to wear a uniform and all the stuff that, goes through people's heads. I was like, this is going to be easy life. Right. And, if you're going with congressmen as, kind of security detail or whatever, they probably not going to dangerous places. So let's go get paid. But thankfully, my father was a little bit more intelligent than me, and he said to me, get your ass back in school and finish up. And so I went ahead, I did that, and I do credit actually going from playing football in school to being deployed was somewhat of a shock, but also in reverse. Being able to go from this, combat environment, all males, you wear a uniform, you have weapons, the whole thing, to not having to go right back into kind of the average workforce. I was able to actually go back and play football. And in doing so, while there aren't weapons and kind of the downside is potentially death or incredible harm, there was still this camaraderie of an all male, kind of team. There was training, there was build up to certain events, and then there's an element of violence still kind of incorporated in that. And so, in hindsight, that probably was really, really effective in kind of a gradual step down for me back into being a 21-year-old kid who, just had this life experience. And as I started going back and doing that, I eventually, you can't stay in school forever. And my father said to me, all right, you're not going to go back to do the contracting thing. You basically have two options. You can go get a job or you can create a job. And just being somewhat of a contrarian, I said, well, getting a job sounds horrendous. What's this like create a job thing? And, he was like, look, you can start a company, but you got to have an idea. You got to build a team, and he started just kind of telling me the basics, and then he set me on my way. And that's the path that I ended up pursuing.
Awesome. So you jumped right into the world of entrepreneurship as a founder. Sounds like it went okay for you. Can you describe how that transition went and where did it take you?
Yeah. So I basically knew nothing, to be completely honest, and made every mistake in the book. I started a company. I had 3 friends from high school. Every single thing that I now know you probably shouldn't do, we did. Including, the way we built the business, the way we did sales, the way we communicated internally, the way that we hired, et cetera. But I was able to build 2 separate businesses kind of sequentially. They were both kind of cash flow software-based businesses. We raised no outside funding for them. Successful enough, but not anything that you're going to retire off of or anything like that. And then I think the big kind of inflection point in my business career was after selling the second business. I went ahead and I went to Facebook and was product manager there. Ran a number of different teams. And that was like a crash course, right? Again, kind of hindsight being 2020. I was at a point where I knew how to start things. I don't think I really understood how to scale them. And as part of that, I could have chosen to go get like an MBA and kind of go to school. I probably would have had to pay for somebody to teach me in that environment. Whereas Facebook was very, equivalent in terms of I got kind of a crash course education, and they happened to pay me to give me that education. And so it was a very unique experience. Obviously, at that point, the business at Facebook was scaling rapidly. It's 2014, 2015. And so it's pretty cool to not only be able to contribute in some way, but also just learn from world-class operators on how to build products, scale them, drive revenue, et cetera.
So there you are in the epicenter, in the heart of Web 2. And along that journey, you got into crypto. Can you tell us about your journey down the crypto rabbit hole?
Yeah. In 2016, I started investing full time. Somebody pitched me on mining. They didn't even really tell me kind of the Bitcoin or crypto story. They were just like, hey, man, my father had been in the data center business for a long time. And they said, it's like data centers, but on steroids. Would you be interested? And so I looked at it and I basically bought some mining equipment to mine Ether just because the cash flow looked like the math worked pretty well. You spend, I think at the time S9 was maybe like $1,200 or something. And you basically mine that all back in like 9 months. And then from there, it's just cash flow. So that was the thought process. And I happened to do it kind of end of 2016. And as many people know, in 2017, Ether went from like $8, $9, $10 to 30, and it was 100 by May. And I remember being like, what the hell is this thing? And so started paying a lot more attention to it. And then I made the genius decision to sell all the ether around 150 bucks. And was like, I am the world's greatest trader. And then I watched as pretty much in tears as ether ran to $1,400 that year. And it's one of those lessons of like, you never actually know everything you think you know. And so being nimble and kind of open-minded and continuing to learn is really important. But it's a great way to get started in the industry.
The thing I'm taking away is that, you're the kind of guy who learns something by doing it. And when I talk to veterans, I always say, get involved, trade, go open up a MetaMask account and start figuring it out. But it's like, put your hands on it. Would you agree with that approach?
Yeah, I think, look, it's like anything, right? If you really think about what goes on in any industry, you can have the academic education and you can, read all the books you want, all the articles, you can watch YouTube videos, you can do all that stuff. And that's a great way to learn a lot of things. But there are some things that you really can only learn by doing. And so, if you look at crypto, for example, let's talk about like custody. I always tell folks that the best thing that you can do is to go take $5 of Bitcoin or Ether and move it from an exchange into, cold storage, then move it into a hardware wallet, then move it into a software wallet, go put it in a multi-sig. And if you screw up, sure, you lost your $5, right? You're going to be mad at yourself. But that's the way you really learn how this stuff works. And so what the ultimate kind of holy grail, I think, is to do both. Do the, kind of more academic content and learn that way, but also learn with hands-on experience as well. And if you can marry those two things together, it usually turns out pretty well for people. Got it.
So you go from the Army to becoming a founder, then you go to Facebook. Eventually you end up founding Morgan Creek, where you become an investor. Did your experience as a founder really shape your investment, philosophy, and how did that go?
Yes and no. My life is just a continuation of me kind of optimizing short term, like what do I want to do now? And I've got plenty of friends who have these like 10-year, okay, year one, I'm going to move to this city. Then year two, I'm going to get this job. Year three, I'm going to, get married. Year four, I'm going to get a house. And I'm like, who are you going to marry? Like, I haven't met that person yet, but year three, I'm going to get married. Right. And that just isn't, really how I live my life. I think I'm probably not smart enough to do that. And so instead it's been, what am I most excited about right now? And, investing came out of me not being excited about any companies to build. I didn't have an idea that I was super excited about. And so started investing and frankly started very slow. Wanted to see if I liked it, kind of, walk before you run. And fairly quickly, maybe the first 6-12 months, realized, hey, I enjoy this. It seems like I've got, I'm half decent at it maybe, but it's going to take some time to really kind of figure it out. And then I think the last piece was I spent a ton of time learning from great investors. And so initially that was me just reading content. So, how do I get my hands on their biographies? How do I go and listen to as many of their interviews as I possibly can? And really start to understand like what makes a good investor? What are the skill sets? What is the personality traits? What are the frameworks that they use? And then over time, as I got to know many of them, either through the podcast or kind of personal relationships, I just always thought to myself, one, let me provide value to them. Let me go find great deals and share that with them. But two, how do I extract the learning? And what you find is many of them are more than willing and super excited about sharing those learnings. So I've been, a great beneficiary of their kindness in terms of sharing that information.
Great. You mentioned the podcast, which is one of the best known podcasts in the entire space. What's a typical day in the life today of the Pomp?
Yeah. Every day is a little different. I would say the mornings are pretty structured. So I wake up, I write a daily email that goes out to, 200,000 people or so, have to take it somewhat seriously to make sure that it's high quality. But I write pretty quickly. I then usually record quite a bit of content. in the mornings, we do a live stream show that goes for the podcast, kind of 11 to 1. And then after 1 o'clock, I think of that as like, that's when really like the business day starts. And from there, that is, meetings, calls, really working on the business itself, and all the investment activities. And, days can end 6, 7 o'clock. Days can end 10, 11 o'clock, right? It really depends. And I've tried to get better at being, more efficient in the afternoons, just given that I feel at a disadvantage. Most people have the whole day to work on the business. I basically have half a day. So I should be hyper efficient there. And when you think about that, you also have to balance it with, I prioritize my sleep.
Yeah.
And so if I'm going to get 8 hours of sleep, I can't, be up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning because I got to wake up the next day and do it all over again. And so just as a forcing function to make sure you get a lot of stuff done in a short period of time.
Got it. So as an investor and looking to the future, what excites you about Web3? Are there particular verticals that make you excited?
I think the whole thing, which is kind of a cop-out answer, but if you think about the internet adoption, it used to be a crazy idea to tell your parents you were quitting your job and you're going to go work in an internet company or to invest in an internet company. Isn't that where, drug dealers and criminals, they were playing on the internet? Well, now every single business is on the internet, right? In some form or fashion. We don't talk about internet companies. If you met somebody like, I run an internet company, you'd be like, did you just wake up from 1994? Right.
Yeah.
And so we just say, no, I have a company. And so I think crypto in general will be the same over time. Obviously, I think, very highly of Bitcoin and kind of the adoption there globally over the next 20, 30 years. I think there will be other technologies that are very valuable as well. And every company is going to have to figure this out in some way. If you look at Facebook, it is now a crypto company, right? They literally changed their name to Meta and they're kind of going all in on it. Twitter, you can actually pay tips with Bitcoin, right? It's a Bitcoin or a crypto company. And you can kind of just go down the line. Amazon, they offer, blockchain AWS services, right? And so each one of these businesses is starting out small, kind of one individual product line or kind of one idea. But over time, I think every single business is going to interface with these technologies. And if they are to become valuable, they'll kind of be abstracted away into the background, right? I don't think about the internet protocols I'm using when I go to google.com. I just type in Google and ask it my question. It gives me an answer and I move on with my day. And it's now a thing that I do, 20 times a day, 30 times a day. But I don't think about what those protocols are. And so I think that's ultimately where this is all headed is all of us are a little maybe nerdy in that we enjoy thinking about the protocols and the token economics and, all that type of stuff. But for the average user who's going to adopt this stuff 5-10 years from now, they're not even going to know what that stuff is. They're just going to say, hey, this is really cool. I can accomplish, A, B, or C task. And then they'll just move on with their day.
What advice would you give Sergeant Pompliano thinking about making a move into crypto today?
Yeah, I think just go bigger and have no fucking fear, which is kind of, canned advice to some degree. I think the advice to an individual usually needs to be pretty personalized. But what I have learned over time is everything that you do is hard. Like anything worth doing is hard. And so rather than trying to build a small company, build a big company, right? Rather than try to make small investments, make big investments. And if you're going to invest your most crucial, valuable resource, which is your time, then you should make sure that the kind of payoff at the end is worth it. And as we kind of think through, how to apply that, it's true if you're an entrepreneur, if you're an investor, or if you're just a manager, an employee, whatever. Every single person, I think, can kind of lay that into their life and just say, am I working on the highest impact thing? Am I working on the thing that could have the biggest payoff? And so part of that is you got to take risk. And that's where kind of the no fear part comes, which is, everything in life is a risk, but understanding what risks are worth taking ends up being a pretty important skill set as you get older.
Got it. So you have your newsletter, you have the podcast. Are there other materials or other resources that you'd recommend for vets to tie into to get up to speed? I mean, Web3 is moving so fast.
people. Like everyone always, I think, is like, oh, go read this book, go do this, whatever. I think the number one way to learn, outside of kind of hands-on stuff, is meet the people. And the beauty of this industry is that people are very, very welcoming. I can't tell you how many people who have DM'd me or emailed me or whatever, and I have ended up doing calls or meeting with them in person or whatever. And I know there's hundreds of other people who do the same thing in the industry. And so that would be my number one suggestion: is find 5 people who you're like, man, these people have their shit together and they seem to really know what's going on. I need to figure out how I can learn from them. And that may be email with 3 questions. That could be a 30-minute, phone call. But I think that's probably the fastest way to get up to speed.
Totally. I'll give a shameless plug for our Discord. We started a Discord for VIDA, and the amount of technical expertise in this thing is unbelievable. So if you're listening, please connect to the Discord. We'll put it in the show notes. And there are a ton of people just willing to help. And it's not just vets, it's also non-vets. So, we talked a little bit about verticals, and you said you're excited about everything. Are you hiring yourself, or do you know any folks who are hiring? Anything that's on the hiring front that you'd like to recommend or point out?
We actually started a business that is fully focused on employment and training for crypto. It's not necessarily specific for veterans, but anyone who is in the crypto industry that's hiring. We spend a lot of time helping them fill those roles. And so if folks just go to pompcryptojobs.com, it's a job marketplace. All the top companies have hundreds of open roles listed there. Self-serve, come in, you apply. It's pretty effective. More than one person a day gets a job through that platform. I think that's probably the fastest way to see where the open roles are and kind of understand, hey, these are the things I'd be interested in, how to apply.
I mean, totally. People are hiring everywhere, right? We've got 120 portfolio companies or so, and even we're hiring every day. It's not easy. So definitely, I'll check out that as well. Pomp, any last thoughts for veterans? Any words of wisdom, as they transition and they're looking for an opportunity in the space?
Yeah, I would actually say don't underestimate yourself, your skill set, and your experience. I've talked to tons and tons of veterans, and there's one conversation I had that always sticks out in my mind. I was talking to a Navy SEAL sniper, and he literally said something to me of like, "Yeah, but I don't have any skills. Like, how can I transition?" And I said, "Listen, man, I just met you. Maybe you're a complete asshole, right? Maybe you are an idiot." But if you're a Navy SEAL sniper, I can promise you that if you called up the CEOs of a couple of companies and said, hey, I'm a Navy SEAL sniper, I'd like to go to lunch with you, or I'd like to take you to lunch. And when I take you to lunch, I'll teach you everything I know about leadership and kind of the SEAL training and sniper school, et cetera. And I'd like to learn about your business. And my guess is that you're going to have a pretty high hit rate of professional CEOs that are interested in that lunch or a coffee meeting or whatever. And so you may not have the experience or expertise from a business sense or an operational role, but the business world spends a lot of time trying to learn about the leadership training, the teamwork, and a lot of the skill sets that military operators have. And so, don't underestimate kind of the value you can provide to C-suite executives from your life experiences. And one of the things that I've always found is I think a lot of veterans try to go into like entry-level roles. They basically say, hey, I just want to get my foot in the door. But if you think about setting yourself on the right trajectory, usually the best thing you can do is go right to the top, go meet that CEO. Regardless of how big the company is. And if you're able to provide them value, usually you can build a pretty good relationship there. And over time, you're able to kind of get in the right role and thrive from there.
Awesome advice. Tell people all the time, shoot high, make sure you're getting in front of the right hiring manager at the right level and things will work for you and find that senior mentor. Awesome. And how should people connect with you?
Twitter's the easiest thing, just at Pompliano on Twitter. I joke that I read my DMs more than my email. So if you need to get a hold of me, that's probably the best way to do it.
Awesome. Hey, I really appreciate you coming on today, Anthony. Discussion was really incredible. And we're so lucky to have you as a veteran and a leader in this space. And again, I also wanted to thank our sponsor, Luca, for doing what you do, and we're deeply appreciative of your support. For those interested in learning more about VIDA, please connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter at PerkinsCR97. Thank you so much, everyone. See you next time.